Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of RIC Day Tuesday. Our special guest for today is an honorary fellow and Dr. Fellow of Royal Institution, Singapore. He is the Region 6 Director and former Deputy Director General for Communities and Local Government Unit Services of Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. He was also the chair of BAMP Yaga Social, Cultural, and Education Cluster. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Honorable Dr. Fellow Dr. Gaspar S. Gayona. Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So the goal of this interview series is to open up the discourse surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. So we want to reiterate that this pandemic continues to have huge effects on the current state of the world. So even though we are isolated from each other, we hope that through proper communication of pertinent information, we can be better informed, aware, and mindful of the situation. So sir, may we know the COVID situation in your area? You're in Western Visayas po?
Yes, we are still in modified general quarantine. It was announced yesterday that we are cleared, but we were brought back to modified GCQ.
Mm-hmm. So how are you doing?
Well, for 2 months, I'm here in the office. I cannot go home to Antique. We cannot cross the boundaries because Iloilo and Iloilo City is totally locked down, and the other provinces. So I stayed in the office for the past 2 months already, waiting for the lockdown to be lifted. But again, we were happy with the announcement yesterday, but this morning it was announced that we are in the modified GCQ. We're just waiting for the guidelines from the local government units on what shall we do with this modified GCQ.
So how is TESDA Region 6 is coping with this pandemic? So we're sure that there are major changes in the operations of TESDA. So would you share us some of your experiences?
Well, of course, just the same as DepEd and said, all our learning programs were aiming to halt, of course. The local government units will not allow any classes to go on. So just like DepEd and said, we are shifting to the new modality of learning delivery. Now, if you can remember the topic that I presented in the prologue and in Brunei, I think that was in Brunei on the effective educators of the world.
Yes, sir.
That was 2 years ago. And that was the challenge that we could have embraced already, or embraced by those who were participated in that conferment ceremony, because that's what we are now challenged. We have to shift. So we have to wait for COVID-19 before we realize that really there is a revolution in terms of education and training, of course. So that's the challenge that we're facing now. Interconnectivity, of course. You know, the situation of our internet in the Philippines. Western Visayas is not excluded from that. So we are while waiting for the approval of the local government units when we can start with our programs. Of course, there are 3 priorities that were given us by the president: agriculture, health, and infrastructure to push the economy and food security. Agriculture is quite simple because you can't really observe social distancing. And the challenge is not in technical vocational education, except for the soft skills. You cannot fully it, no? You cannot put it in full e-learning. You still need laboratories. So that's the challenge. Of course, here in Region 6, we have started with agriculture in Guimaras because from the start, zero kasi siya in terms of cases. And the governor and the mayor of the municipality has already given the go signal. But that is in that area. In other provinces here in Region 6, we cannot because the local government units will not yet allow classes or learning programs to start. And we have done 2 surveys already on the readiness of our private technical vocational institutions, including our own institutions in TESDA, as regards their capability to shift into blended or pure e-learning. Well, a lot of them would say they are ready, given the time. Meaning that if there is a pronouncement that classes could start in June, or in August coinciding with that of DepEd, majority of our technical vocational institutions will still be face-to-face. And that's the challenge because as pronounced, it's no longer allowed. So that's what we are looking into. That's why while the lockdown is still here, I have requested all our learning facilitators, they are in work from home, to transit or to convert already their competency-based curriculum into blended learning materials. And that's what they will be doing until the end of May. But of course, it's not as fast as we want it because, again, while it can be done by the institutions under the direct supervision of TESDA Region 6, I doubt if that can be fast-tracked by the private TVIs. And that's the challenge because we will be flooded by a lot of constituents that will be requiring or requesting for training programs as compared to the higher education. Even Senator Bongo has already emphasized that there is a need to strengthen technical vocational education and training if we are discussing about Balik Provincial, for example, the OFWs repatriated, and the displaced workers. So during our own meetings here, I challenged the industry to give us the data because while we are talking about skilling, reskilling, or upskilling of both the remaining workers in the industry and those that were displaced, how many are they in Region 6? I do not have any idea. And what qualifications? So practically we were caught, all of us were caught flat-footed by the situation. But of course, this is not new. As I've said, I delivered this presentation in Dipolog and in Brunei. Nobody listened to it. Even I forwarded it this morning to our boss in Manila and some of the RDs, and I said, we could have embraced this already. Well, I said, well, we could have, but we have to double our time because certainly there will still be learners that will be requiring or requesting for training. But we have to balance while we are pushing for a blended and pure e-learning delivery. We have to look also into considerations. Our learners, do they have the access? Because if they don't have the access to what's the use of having a blended learning material if they do not have any access to internet? So these are the things that are confronting the whole of the education sector. I think it's not only TVET, it's DepEd and CHED. So that's our situation here in Region 6, similar to other regions.
So since many universities have been forced to hold classes online, in your opinion, how will the future trends of academia be affected and influenced by this situation? And what is your forecast for the future, near future?
Well, first is that we can no longer back out from this. The changes in technology, the fast change in ICT, a lot of these things have been challenging education in the past 5 years. I think it's already in the past 5 years. But of course, the upgrading of the skills of our learning facilitators, the teachers, the trainers, have not been adept to the changes in technology. So look at the situation now. When we are looking for a blended and online learning, it's the learning facilitators that are having the problem because, again, the capability. Uh, well, in the next few months, there might be reduction when it comes to the numbers of students in the classroom. But the demand for, like in technical education, the demand for technical education will be higher as compared to the other sectors. Of course, the basic education will always be there as long as your population is increasing. Population in basic education will always be there. But on how to cope up with this is the challenge that they're facing now. When it comes to technical education, the big the big challenge that we are having at this time is this. We have a lot of OFWs coming home. Now, we do not know if they can still return. The the lifting of the lockdowns of countries will not be at the same time. So even if the Philippines has already lifted its lockdown, its its exports, like for example, does it still has an open market because the country where the exports will be going is still closed. So the commercial flights might not yet be that frequent as before. So that will be affected, meaning there will be a lot of displaced workers here. So from the OFWs coming home, plus the displaced workers who are here in the Philippines already, with the medium, with the micro, small, and medium enterprises composing the greater bulk of our economy, 92%, I think, if my memory would serve me right, 92% of our industries are MSMEs. So, and we do not have yet the data of how many are displaced among the MSMEs. While we are focusing on food production, how many of the MSMEs are also in food? So these are the things that we are confronting at this point in time. Yeah, that's why uh, that's why the shift to the new modalities of learning might be heavy at this time because we were caught flat-footed. But this will be the trend even if there is no COVID-19. It was only, well, if I may say, it's COVID-19 that triggered the realization that we could have shifted already modalities of learning long before. Now, we could not have maintained the traditional curriculum delivery that we have. No, as I've said, 2 years ago, I shared this already, and the literatures where I sourced out my presentation were there for in past 5 years. So meaning we were delayed by 7 years when it comes to shifting and using or maximizing the use of technology in learning. Huh? And I'm not only talking about learning within the traditional academic institution or learning venue, but the e-learning and the blended learning could also be used by the industries themselves for the continuous upgrading of their workers as we confront the fourth industrial revolution. So these are the things that we are facing now. A painful, it's a very, very bitter pill. It's a painful reality, but we were overtaken by the changes in technology. We were so confident that our systems and our processes in education are still there. We do not debunk, of course, the traditional process, but well, I don't I don't see, and even the training of teachers now, the BS in education, has to shift also in training the future learning facilitators to become developers of e-learning materials rather than still continue with the face-to-face traditional delivery of learning.
So thank you very much. My next question is, almost all educational institutions around the world have been closed temporarily in an attempt to curb the spread of the COVID-19. Some schools have implemented e-learning or online classes, home-based learning, and other distance education solutions. Even TASDA has e-learning or online classes. So in the Philippines, however, several groups urge the government to suspend online classes due to resource constraints and lack of stable internet, making online classes difficult for Filipino students. So the same group also said that allowing online classes to continue amid this pandemic would lead to inaccessibility of education. So what is your opinion about this, or how should the government address this issue?
Well, this is the issue that we have to look in different angles. Access of learners to education through internet. The response to this could have been, if the situation is normal, of course we can have strategic steps. We build the infrastructure first. As we develop the learning materials, we strengthen the capability of our learning facilitators. But at this point in time, we cannot do that. We have to do this simultaneously. That's why, like for example, here in our case, Western Visayas is still, while there is an urban area, is still a rural area. So what I'm doing when it comes to what we'll be doing when it comes to the delivery of programs is that we just put the satellite dish in all our vehicles and bring the training into the communities. But that's good for agriculture. But how about for tourism? How about for others? So I do not know, but you delay the implementation of the new modalities of learning. It's not really new because it has been there for some time. This other modalities of learning, but if you go into face-to-face again, that would just open the floodgate again for possible recurrence of the sickness. And of course, you cannot, in our case, we have 25 per batch. You cannot accommodate 25 in one class if you want to go back into the face-to-face. You either cut it into half or whatever is the capacity of the classroom. So there will be a lot of students that will have to wait until the others have finished already, if it is face-to-face. As I've said, it has to be, we have to look for ways on how to combine all these things because it's easy for basic education that doesn't have the technology component because you can go online now for, of course, for institutions that are capable. But again, capability of the institution is one, while the access of the learners to internet or to infrastructure is another. So how shall we reconcile that? But the reality is there. We just have to confront this. Otherwise, the best possible policy that you can do is suspend all education and training processes at this time. We prepare for next year. If that is possible, if that is possible. So let's prepare the facilities first, infrastructure, because of course it's also dangerous to dive into a haphazard educational process. This is not an ordinary process. We are talking about the hearts and the brains of young people here that you have to hone. So go into haphazard approach on this, then you will end up with young children maturing into I don't know, into I don't know. No? So that's the reality that we are confronting. But while others would say that let's stop e-learning first, then we go back to the face-to-face because they are not ready. Uh, we just have to find ways on how to deliver our programs and focus on programs. It's in the case of technical education, we just have to ask the industry and then we can focus our programs. But in the case of the other managers of education, you cannot because they have the prepared curriculum. So you see, this is the time for Tibet to and the industry to really sit down together because, uh, like for example, in automotive, you cannot put the automotive in pure e-learning. You can put the e part and the theories, but you still have the laboratory. But if, like for example, there is an automotive shop near the house of the learner, and the equipment or technology is already modern, so why do they have to go to school? They can go to the workshop. Also, you can just partner with the industry where they will be doing their laboratory. So there are so many ways. There are so many ways. But again, because we were caught flat-footed by this, we were not prepared. So we are just doing this simultaneously. Programs that can be delivered face-to-face as allowed, like agriculture, if you have 4 hectares, of course, that's more than enough for 25 people. You can scatter them in 4 hectares for their practicum. But for other qualifications or other competencies, then you have to look for ways on how to combine face-to-face and e-learning. Bookkeeping can be done e-learning. CAD could be done e-learning. I do not know about landscaping if you can do that in e-learning. So that's the challenge that we are facing.
Thank you very much, sir. So my next question is, how can professionals who are deeply involved to fuel social transformation begin to apply their own experience during pandemic in order to help others in the world?
Professionals, uh, well, each one has to find his own place. There will always be spaces in the long stretch of the road. There will be always spaces where we can insert ourselves. If I have to talk about education, in our case, like for example, most of the times you just train. I believe that all our regions now are training all their learning facilitators, their trainers, into how to use blended learning materials. I did not follow that. I am now scheduling the orientation on the development of the blended learning materials for all our staff. So meaning, like for example, you are not a trainer, you are in the admin, and you are a graduate of accountancy. But if you are familiar with the blended learning materials, can you not develop, like for example, a blended learning materials in bookkeeping, since you are an accountant already, so that everybody would know why would that why do I do it? Because as I've said, there will always be opportunity for every individual at this point in time to extend their hands to others. And if you are not preparing yourself on what to give or what to share to others, then what will you do? You will just be one of those people who will be locked down in their homes and pray na lang. You just pray because you cannot help. And helping will not require a lot of professional degrees. We just have to find our own way. Like for the past month, Tesla was also busy in producing face masks. That's not our mandate. Face masks, PPEs, face shields that we share to the checkpoints, to our front liners. And you know, if you're familiar with Region 6, I do not have any program here in Iloilo for that. So all the products that we are distributing for free comes from Capiz, Aklan, Capiz and Aklan. And we just have to fetch it in the boundary because the vehicles cannot cross the boundary. And our joke is this: you produce, the regional director will distribute. So I'm the ones that is distributing. So in that regard, as simple as that, we will always have a space on how to help and what to help to others. No? In our saying, God will not ask us for something that we cannot do anyway. No, He will do His own thing beyond what we can do. But this is as professionals, better than those who have not achieved any academic accomplishments or achievements, we can think of a lot of innovative ways to help others.
Would you give us your personal advice as to how we can help or how to handle this crisis?
So we just have to follow the directives. Here in the Philippines, we have this very clear. Just have to go the new normal, no? Because there is no vaccine yet, there is no medicine yet. So even if the lockdown is lifted, we cannot let our guards down. It happened in some countries, they lifted, and then there's a recurrence of it. And in the Philippines, it's quite difficult. There are so many islands here. And one case in one island cannot just easily be contained. So let's follow the new normal, the advice. So those social distancing, we wear face masks when we get out of our homes, wash our hands, all those, all those precautionary things. We will not suffer, of course, if we wear masks. It's awkward because that has not been our norm, our usual thing. But I've been doing that for the past 2 months. I feel awkward, but I cannot because I'll be caught and I'll be jailed by the local government unit because the mayor has already declared that if you are not wearing your mask, I'll put you in jail. So I have to follow. And I think, yeah, really, follow the law, have your own self-discipline. If you do not, if you're not afraid to die, don't let the others go with you. Otherwise, otherwise you'll just be as criminal as the others. So if you don't care, just stay home. But don't put the others into that danger of becoming victims of this. We cannot see this. Even we presume that our tables are clean, we do not really know if it's there or not because we cannot see. It's not like an enemy that you can see that you can just shoot. Now you cannot shoot anything because you cannot see. So my advice is just we follow whatever our government is advising us. The new normal will be there. We do not know when the vaccine will be developed. They said it's 1 year. They said it's 6 months. We do not really know. But the thing that we know is that we know how to wear the mask. We know how to wash our hands. We know that if it's not necessary, we don't get out of our homes. So we just follow the advice of our government, and I think we are not the only ones that will be put in safety, but we can also put the others in safety.
We understand that Western Visayas is one of the 8 areas with low risk of infection. So they said that you will not now be longer put into ECQ or GCQ, but what can the people and the local governments in Metro Manila take away from Region 6 example?
Well, it's still there. No? It's still how one it's how fast for the local government units to pass the executive order. Second is that it's the discipline of the people. If you follow the directives of the local government, you do not have any problems. So that's why I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to contain this fast. But again, we do not know because uh, I'm not sure about the capacity of the local government units or the Department of Health to fast track the testing. Because the ones that's happening in Manila now, I think the increase is due to testing.
Mhm.
And because we do not know, you might be asymptomatic, but you are also a carrier. That's why I myself, I do not even feel anything, but I'm not confident because you might be a carrier because we have been a lot of meetings. We were in Manila before the lockdown, so we don't really know. Of course, we had been locked down for 2 months, but as I've said, there are people who are not going out of their homes, and yet they were tested positive. So I think that's how Region 6 were able to control this. As I've said, we cannot cross boundaries. I cannot even go to my provinces 2 hours away because I cannot cross the boundary. If I cross the boundary, I cannot come back to Iloilo. While the other provinces already GCQ, Iloilo City and the whole of Iloilo province is ECQ. So regardless whether you are GCQ or not, you cannot come into Iloilo. So that's how strict it is. And people are following. There's no public transport. Even the tricycad here are watched by the frontliners. So they stop once they're told you do not have to go. But of course, we have also in our case, like for example, we have also to look into the needs of those who have nothing. So sometimes because we have our mini organic farm, whatever we harvest here, we share to some of the poor here in the nearby, in the surrounding community of the regional office. And at this point in time, we are on that massive development of our organic farms so that we can cater to the needs of those. Because, of course, they are not earning. What can the social amelioration do? Until when? And until when will the government has the money to give to this number of people? And there are still who are not yet recipient to this because they were not included in the list. And we do not have any sane list of all these poor people. I do not know why. We have the law on anti-poverty, and yet we do not have the list of who are the poor. So, and there are still a lot of those who have not received. So they will start going out of their homes begging. And that's another trigger of that. So as you ask, what can the professionals do? Well, that's one of the things that they can do to prevent people from the poor, most especially the poor, to get out of their homes and by extending to them whatever you can extend until this pandemic is over and we do not even know when. So follow the rules, follow the directives of the local government units, and just do your own thing to stop the spread of this coronavirus.
So we recognize that this pandemic has affected all sectors drastically. Would you share some of your realizations, discernments as to how the virus affected individuals, families, our government, and our country?
Well, when it comes to the government, well, of course, it's really hard up at this point in time because whatever you have saved for so many years, you just have to spend. Uh, I know how difficult it is for the government at this time to balance between people and the economy. Some people would say, let's prioritize the health. But eventually, if you do not have the money anymore, what will these people do? Yeah, but if you cannot prioritize the economy, because it's people who are working there, so you just have to balance. So I know how difficult it is. Even in our case as a regional director here, you cannot push your people to come to the office in a week. In a week, they come on Mondays, but the whole of the week you are the only ones in the office. You cannot push them to come. So that's how difficult it is. And well, for the country, it's time for cohesiveness. No? Because no matter what, we are an ethnic people. We have so many tribes. Nobody can except for those descendants of the other nationalities who are here in the country. Majority of us are ethnic people. We forgot about those things. We forgot about our culture of being a community. But there's something good in the family because nobody is going out anymore, so you can spend more time. Unfortunately, it does not happen in my case because my wife and my second to the youngest is with me, but the other four is in Antique. I cannot cross. So we just talk in the Viber or in the Messenger. And I think that's one of the positive things. The family was able to come together and rediscover the value of being in the family. And while the churches are closed, but I think being in the family leads to being closer to God as well, no? To their faith, no matter what your faith is, but closer because at this point in time, I think everybody just know how to pray. And I, I, I think the model that we have to really appreciate is the model of the mountain province. You know, like for example, in one certain mountain province or Benguet, it's zero. They didn't even they didn't even accept the amelioration. But they are what do they eat? What do they plant? Vegetables. Okay? But they are in a community. As I've said, it's the local government units together with the people inside that just give it to other people because we can support ourselves. I think that's the culture of the Filipinos that many of us have forgotten. That we come from the ethnic communities and the very basic to the ethnic communities is family and community. And well, I think those are the things that we need to consider. Well, the economy will slowly open, but again, it's really have to double your time. In our case, like for example in Tesla, we really have to bear the burden of carrying all those displaced workers, those balik probinsya, the OFWs, the the workers in the industry that are maintained by the industry, but there are new technologies. So you have to double your time in combining your research and responding to what's there because you lack the information and yet the challenge is there. So but you cannot do away with this anymore. You cannot just have to confront this. So everybody is affected. But again, positive effect is that individuals were able to realize how long how long are their arms to extend to the needs of others. Can see that every day in the TV. Even ordinary people, even a delivery boy will pass by a bakery to buy bread to give to those the homeless that he passes by every day, and that comes from his tip. So I think that's the positive thing that happened here. Uh, the the hearts of people became bigger, and the arms of people became grew longer to extend to the needs of others. And then, of course, the close families, because that's what we are as Filipinos. I think that's a really common culture in the ASEAN. A close family ties brought about by this because we cannot get out anyway. And then we realized that the more time outside, except for work, is really waste of time. People have realized that that's really nice to be at home if you are not at work. So I think that's one of the realization, and of course, stronger relation to their God. Yeah? And for so many people became no, they abide by the laws, except for those hard-headed Filipinos who do not know how to respect the law. But majority of the Filipinos return to the basic of following the law, of following the instructions. And I think that's one reason why Region 6 was able to curb this earlier than the others.
What are you looking forward to doing first after this lockdown period?
Well, well, just have to start the programs because, uh, as I've said, we are continuously coordinating with the local government units when we can start because, like for example, in one of my provinces here, I have three provinces that have no provincial directors, so I have to assume the responsibility of being a regional director and provincial director also for the three provinces. We have 150 vegetable farmers who are just waiting for the time. So we are coordinating with the local government units. If they will agree, we can start. Anyway, it's agriculture. So slowly, it's going back to work. And then, I'm doing my own personal learning journey on how to develop again e-learning materials while I am doing a lot of things in my presentations in the RI ceremonies. I still have to refine that. So every day of my life, I'm learning, and I'm old already, so I'm still learning how to develop e-learning materials as a new learning. Now, going back to the things that suppose you have done before, but you were not able to do because of busy work. So, and well, you have to just invest your time on this while there is still lockdown. But slowly, once the local government said, okay, go, and I think the new directives came from the central office as well. Just this afternoon, I've not opened my file yet. That we push through with our programs, but with care, of course. Again, we cannot go back to the normal thing that we were doing before. We just have to accept the fact that our private TVIs will have the burden of catching up with the demand of converting their competency-based curriculum into blended learning materials. So I think for us here in TESDA, in Region 6, just have to continue helping our own constituents and continue with our developing our programs in coordination with the industry and the local government units. We will survive this, we know. Just have to do our own contribution here.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So aside from learning and working, what are the things that keep you busy during this while in lockdown or quarantine? Then how do these things help you throughout the lockdown days?
Well, as I've said, I'm not alone in my office, in my dormitory. My first year college and my wife is with me, who is who is in wheelchair. So I have to take care because she is diabetic, she is high blood, so she is vulnerable to this. So I have my own inspiration. I'm learning, I'm doing, signing papers, distributing masks. And then, of course, as instructed, when you go back, you change everything that you have so that, because I have a patient with me. So I'm not really lonely. I'm not really alone. And then, of course, continues with our Zoom meeting with my provincial directors and my administrators. Continue with our organic agriculture. And then attend meetings also in Zoom. those are the things doesn't really didn't really change. It's a normal pattern of your life, except that of course at a certain point in time you're looking for your stuff but you cannot find them. But just the thing is that you have to go back to the technology. I was able to use Zoom, like for example, which I do not know before, and the other platforms. Now I'm busy. I'm busy with my self-learning on the e-learning material development, and hopefully in the next conferment ceremony, it will be a e-learning platform that I'll be presenting if you will be inviting me as your speaker. So those are the things that keep myself busy. If once the masks arrive from the other provinces, you go around and distribute them to the frontliners in the checkpoints and even to the hospitals.
So since COVID-19 has greatly affected many lives and it has challenged us not just physically, but also mentally, spiritually, economically, what words of wisdom will you tell everybody to inspire and motivate them to keep on believing that we shall surpass this pandemic?
So there is no storm that we cannot weather anyway. Uh, Life will go on, but as long as we don't live to eat, we eat to live and give meaning to our lives. There will always be trials in our lives, and this is one. And I think this is one of the heaviest trials that we have to face. It disturbed our lives. It disturbed the pattern of living. It disturbed even our perspectives in life. But if we have to look back, if we have to look deeper into those changes that this pandemic has resulted in us, we will realize that these changes were really the basic things that we could have lived before. Living with our family, realizing who we are, how important is to extend our arms to others. As as we always say, the journey in life is the journey to return. And I think one of the experiences that we had during this pandemic is our journey to return to the real me, the real I, the real we. No? Going back to the families, going back and reflecting to yourselves what's your significance in life, going back to relationships with others, even if you do not know them. So I think uh, the question was really, why did we why did we need COVID-19 to make us realize these things, that these are the things that are in us already. So I think continue to the changes that this pandemic has resulted in us. We are what we are, and we are what we are not yet. So just continue to find the significance of each other in our society today, in our family, now, most especially in the lives of those who have nobody, nowhere, and nothing to turn to.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us, and thank you for joining us for this conversation interview. And we wish you well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we hope to see you again soon once this is all settled down.
Georgine, are you in the Philippines or in Singapore?
Singapore.
Ah, okay. How small the world is.
Yeah.
In Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the invite, and thank
Thank you
you
very much, sir.
for giving the opportunity to share some insights.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So while there are no obvious solutions under these rapidly changing conditions and unpredictable period of disruption, educational leaders and policymakers should take this crisis as a wake-up call to implement new learning models that will benefit everybody to plan and prepare for emergencies and make the system more resilient. So it is high time for innovation and creativity. The question is, who has the courage to stand up and introduce a new brand of approach to learning? So we at RI strongly believe that proper knowledge can begin right at home by connecting to our very own pool of talented members. So the T-Day Tuesday interview series hopes to bring together innovative thinkers and pioneers from over 300 RI institutes to share their own specialized knowledge about the world today. So thank you for tuning in today, and thank you to our special guest, Dr. Gayona. Thank you very much, sir. So we thank you for your continued support for RI's activities, and we hope that you will stay safe, healthy, and well. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, bye, bye. Stay safe. Stay safe.